here's the key. From shifting the way an entire group, teenagers, would communicate, to a developing world tool for banking the unbanked, innovators seized on the new capability of texting in unimaginable ways. The third generation, 3G, married wireless and digital networks to open the door to connecting with the other new technological development of the time, the internet, in a limited way. And today's technology, 4G, completed that digital migration, enabling higher speeds for sophisticated applications, including video. Again, greater capability in the network led to unanticipated innovation. Without 4G, there would not have been Waze, or Uber, or Snapchat, or Instagram, or the list keeps going on.
My name is Debbie, and I live in Huntington, New York. I'm a mother of 2 children, 7 and 9 years old, and we recently had a cell repeater, or a cell tower, placed on a utility pole outside of my house, on the right-of-way of the property. It emits radio frequency radiation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether we like it or not. And it's an eyesore. It's very tall, towers over my backyard. When my kids play, it's what I see in the background. And it looms there. And I wonder, are my kids safe? Are we safe to live in this house now that that has been placed out there?
Science is warning us about biological impacts.
The data we're going to look at are all published science, testing results, or public standards. At the bottom end of the radiation scale of what's called power density or signal strength is the minimum level at which cell phones will work. Pine needles were found to age prematurely at 0.000027. At short-term exposures of 0.05, children aged 8 to 17 experienced headache, irritation, concentration difficulties, and behavioral problems. 0.1 is the biobiology or building biology guideline for extreme concern. 1.0 produced sperm DNA fragmentation and a decrease in sperm viability in vitro. Also at 1.0, the science shows the following bodily effects can occur: headaches, dizziness, fatigue, insomnia, chest pain, difficulty breathing, and indigestion. 2.5 saw altered calcium metabolism in heart muscle cells. 4.0, changes in the hippocampus affecting brain memory and learning. And at 6.0, DNA damage in cells. So, where are smart meters on this list? Electrical Power Institute in December 2010 measured a single Itron smart meter with pulses up to 7.93 microwatts per centimeter squared. These tests are at a close distance, approximately 1 foot away from the meter, but an infant's crib could be just as close on the other side of the wall where the meter or bank of meters are installed. Even though there are all these known health effects at levels far lower, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg see fit to set the standard at 9.5. And China, Poland, and Russia, 10.0. This is the same level at which behavior has been altered, producing reflexes of avoidance following 30-minute exposures. A room of 12 smart meters, very common and even a conservative number in an apartment building, tested at 19.8 microwatts per centimeter squared. So how can utilities and governments get away with forcing these devices on everyone? This is how. In Canada and the US and several other civilized countries, the safety limit is set at 600 to 1,000 microwatts per centimeter squared. This so-called safety limit is literally tens of thousands of times higher than levels which are known to damage health, according to peer-reviewed published science.
How is this even possible?
The FCC chairperson, Ajit Pai, he worked for Verizon for 2 years as their attorney before he sat in that seat where he is now. And the prior chairperson of the FCC, Tom Wheeler, he worked for the lobbying, he was a lobbyist for the communications industry, for the telecommunications industry, before he became the chairperson of the FCC. So that makes me wonder if maybe there's a conflict of interest here.
big game changer is that 5G will use much higher frequency bands than previously thought viable for mobile broadband and other applications. Such millimeter wave signals have physical properties that are both a limitation and a strength. But brilliant engineers have developed new antennas that can aim and amplify signals. Now, to make this work, the 5G build-out is going to be very infrastructure intensive, requiring massive deployment of small cells. I'm confident that the actions will lead to a cornucopia of unanticipated, innovative uses and will generate tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important, because it means that U.S. companies will be the first out of the gate. And that is why 5G is a national priority. And stay out of the way of technological development. Unlike some countries, we do not believe that we should spend the next couple of years studying what 5G should be or how it should operate and how to allocate spectrum based on those assumptions. The future has a way of inventing itself. Turning innovators loose is far preferable to expecting committees and regulators to define the future. We won't wait for the standard. We're already seeing the industry gearing up to seize this opportunity. Verizon and AT&T tell us they'll begin deploying 5G trials in 2017. And the first commercial deployments they're talking about are expected in 2020. And we're not done. As part of our July 14 action, we also plan to ask for comments on opening up other high-frequency bands. Many of the high-frequency bands that we will make available for 5G currently have some satellite users, as well as some Defense Department applications, or at least the possibility of future satellite and defense users. This means sharing will be required between satellite and terrestrial wireless, an issue that is especially relevant in the 28 gigahertz band. But if anyone tells you that they know the details of what 5G is going to become, run the other way. Yes, 5G will connect the Internet of Everything. If something can be connected, it will be connected in the 5G world. Hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers. However, we must reject the notion that the 5G future will be the sole provenance of urban areas. The 5G revolution will touch all corners of our country. A lot more small cells, which means a lot more antenna siting decisions by local governments, and tightened our shot clock for siting application reviews. America's local governments will play an important role in determining how we fulfill this national priority. You can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet to be imagined and will generate tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important.
So they're part of what's called a vulnerable population, along with the elderly, the disabled, the immune compromised. They're vulnerable, pregnant women. And so my children live here and play here and sleep here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's 70 feet outside their bedroom window. So I went to the town of Huntington and I asked for some answers as to who put the equipment in and what exactly is emitted from the equipment, and are there guidelines for the equipment, standards for safety, and bottom line, is it safe or will we be affected in the long term? And so the answer I got was, you are completely safe. There is no danger in having one of these outside your home.
Did you know that in China, pregnant women are required to wear special shielded clothing that protects their unborn children? I I didn't either. Protect them from what? This apron, commonly used by pregnant Chinese women, uses special fabric that shields the embryo from RF or microwave radiation, like the kind that comes out of your cell phone and Wi-Fi routers. Did you know that in Israel, the parliament approved a bill requiring all cell phones for sale have this label? Warning. The health ministry cautions that heavy use and carrying this device next to the body may increase the risk of cancer, especially among children. I didn't know that, nor did I know that in 2011, the World Health Organization reclassified RF radiation, or microwave radiation, as a Class 2B carcinogen. That's the same category as lead.
Here you see how the red blood cells behave before the exposure to a smart meter.
Normal cell walls, fairly separated and looking healthy. So after 2 minutes of exposure in front of the smart meter,
He said 2 minutes.
at about 1 foot away, we see a totally different story. Sample 1, you can see a lot of degradation in the cells. The cell walls have been broken, and you see changes in the cells which are called mycoplasma. It shows a mutation to the cell. In the second sample, we see a different type of degradation to the cell membranes. You can see a corrugation here. This is called bottle cap formation. So this third subject, when we did her sample, she had to be pulled away from the meter after 45 seconds because she complained about a increasingly severe headache. And here you see a phenomenon called rouleau, where the red blood cells are stacking up. Every single one of these is a degradation.
Big data has a big history. A history built upon many innovations, upon countless discoveries. Pushing humanity into new ways of thinking, new capabilities, a new way of seeing how the future can be. New ways of finding value in the massive amounts of data being created. And when others didn't see the future of how to use big data, you did. You found there were needs in places and industries no one knew existed, yet. Harnessing data to change lives, transform industries, and accelerate human potential. To personalize products, inspire collaboration, and improve engagement for better business and social outcomes. You changed the way we personalize healthcare, predict illness based on complex factors in patient records. You unlock the human genome to target disease, automate business decisions, empower cybersecurity, create smarter and safer cities, and in the conservation of this small planet we call home. See what remarkable things we've achieved so far using data to further human life? Imagine what more the future holds. Today's innovations will be passed on to new generations so they can write a new future. Together, we are defining the future. From machine learning to advanced analytics, we are harnessing data for real-world outcomes, shaping history to make history. Think about how you are seizing the data to change the future.
The thought process that went into building these applications, that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while. I mean, it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. The inventors understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
Those several minutes of terror, Laura Lyons says, began when the speaker on her Nest security camera began blasting an emergency alert through her family's California home. She says what followed was a voice warning them that 3 missiles from North Korea were headed to the U.S. and to take shelter. The hoax sent Lyons, her husband, and their 8-year-old son into a panic.
We called Nest. They admitted that they had received multiple reports of Nest cameras being hacked in the last week.
You don't want to say anything is 100% secure all the time. But
Wired News editor Brian Barrett says while tech companies stress greater security and convenience, users shouldn't lose sight of taking precautions of their own.
Incidents like this remind people that they need to give their devices a second thought and take a strong look at if they really need them, why they need them, and if they're going to get them, how they're going to make sure that they stay protected.
So, well, I did find that the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, agrees with me that in 2012 they submitted a report to the FCC asking them to revisit and revise their standards, their outdated standards. And the FCC responded by opening a window to accept submissions, feedback from scientists, experts worldwide, and they received 955 submissions within a 2-year period. Then the window closed, and everyone waited to see what the FCC would do. Well, to this day, it's still considered an open docket. Nothing at all has been done.
The reason why I've brought this out, actually, with the Gateshead Council issue that we had, the head of dosimetry at PHE says that my assumption, Mark Steele's assumption, that this microwave radiation has a more deleterious effect on small children. It's not based in science. It's pretty interesting. This is the IAEA. Obviously, PHE rely on them for their evidence. This is the same device. One's a child's head, one's an adult's head. It's a simulation. Does that look like it's the same damage? It doesn't to me. Now, when did we ever get a peer, a scientist, because I'm sure they get pretty reasonable salaries. When did we ever pay a British scientist to tell lies to people?
I'm Dr. Martin Blank from the Department of Physiology and Cellular Biophysics at Columbia University. I'm here with disturbing news about our favorite gadgets.
We are performing an experiment on children. We are exposing children to microwave radiation for 6 hours during every school day. We have had absolutely no studies looking at the long-term effects of this radiation on young people or even on adults.
Cell phones, tablets, Wi-Fi, etc. Putting it bluntly, they are damaging the living cells in our bodies and killing many of us prematurely.
It may take a year or two, but you can cause neurological damage and cancers with low-level microwaves, and you can make all your opponents sick. It's a perfect weapon for a government.
The human body, speaking now as a biologist and as a physician, was not designed to deal with the explosion of EMF activity in the environment. And
there are studies looking at rats. These rats have an increased risk of developing various types of cancers. Their immune system is impaired. There's evidence of DNA breaks.
We are seeing increases in brain tumors. We're seeing increases in Alzheimer's. We're seeing increases in all of the neurotransmitter diseases, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's. These are all disease systems that are known to be associated with low-level energy exposures.
We talk about 24/7, around-the-clock exposure, wherever you are and your whole body. You never get away from it. And it seems from our studies that maybe your immune system can cope with for a time, but it will deteriorate, and then the irradiation will definitely damage cells at a deeper level. And the question is, what will then happen? as you say, we don't see people falling dead on the street. But for instance, here in Sweden, more than 1/3 of people report heavy problems with their nighttime sleep. And sleep is one of these areas which definitely various forms of electromagnetic fields will have an impact on.
Cancer is not the main concern that I have. I'm really concerned about sperm count and about effects on pregnancy. I just got back from a conference in Turkey and Greece where we heard new studies showing that prenatal exposure to animals results in offspring that have smaller brains and more hyperactivity.
I think this interferes not only with your health but with your abilities to learn.
I feel like we are an experiment. What's going to happen in decades of living with constant exposure to this low-frequency radiation? There was a study I came across called the National Toxicology Program Study. It was a $25 million impressive study done right here in the United States. And the final results haven't been released yet. Any day now, though. But there was a partial release of some findings in 2016. I believe it was May. And the reason they released partial results was because they felt that what they found was so important that they wanted to get it out as soon as possible. And what they found was that non-ionizing radiation, radiation that does not heat the body, such as electromagnetic frequency radiation, which is what they used for the study, it did cause malignant gliomas, an increase in malignant gliomas, which is brain cancer. So since those partial findings were released, the American Academy of Pediatrics has announced that they now believe there needs to be more research, and so did the American Cancer Society. Dr. Otis Brawley is the chief medical officer at the American Cancer Society, and he said that that study marks a paradigm shift.
So hi, my name's Kevin Modis. I'm with the California Brain Tumor Association, but actually collaborate with 10 other groups. One of the groups is emfscientist.org, emfscientist.org. Clearly, our scientists, along with the other groups I work with, which are composed of people who are developing wireless health effects from their various sources. For instance, people developing brain tumors from their cell phone and the radiation emits. People developing neurological symptoms from the Wi-Fi, from school Wi-Fi. People developing neurological and cancerous health effects from simple smart meters. Smart meters being little wireless meters that are put on people's homes so that people don't have to come by and read the meter themselves manually. So regardless of the source, and cell towers are the most powerful source of wireless radiation emissions, regardless of the source, the health effects can be the same. So what brings me here today is the rollout of 5G technology. And people need to understand that 5G technology is very different from 2G, 3G, and 4G that preceded it. And that is because the wireless radiation is using a higher frequency. Our current wireless technology uses about 1 gigahertz to 4 gigahertz. This new 5G technology is ultra high frequency, ultra high intensity, and it's 24 gigahertz to 90 gigahertz. To put this in some type of perspective, 90 gigahertz is 90 billion electromagnetic waves per second hitting your body. We know people are already getting sick from the lower frequencies, and we expect, that is our scientists expect, that these higher, ultra-high frequency microwaves are going to bring people to disease quicker and in a more intense form. The other problem with 5G technology is these microwaves are very short. So our old microwaves were about 2.5 to 3 feet long. These are now about 1 inch to half an inch long, and they don't travel very well. So they're going to have to put a little cell tower transmitter in front of about every 2 to 10 homes. Now this is a big problem because we know that cancer rates around regular cell towers are about 3 or 4 times what they normally should be. We also know that there's neurological symptoms that increase as you get closer and closer to a cell tower. Now these new transmitters are going to be placed close to people's homes. It's going to be continuous exposure as with other cell towers, but it'll be emitting a much more higher frequency, high intensity wireless radiation. So we have a tremendous problem that's happening, and people need to understand that the FCC is pushing this technology nationwide. What's also important for people to understand is the FCC is dominated by the wireless industry itself. And the FCC are the people that are given the responsibility and privilege of regulating wireless radiation human exposure standards.
I have to tell people 5G is a killer. I'm Mark Steele, anybody who hasn't heard me. I'm a weapons systems head-up display expert, one of the leading experts in the world. I've actually brought cover in relation to this, and the reason I became an expert was because I invented them. State of the art. 70,000 children self-harmed in school last year, and they're killing them with a Wi-Fi. Sterilised them as well. All the data is there. It's coming out of Israel, coming out of the USC Environmental Health Trust. Do your own research. When you see these headlines, the mainstream media aren't covering it. We spoke before, so what I mentioned before about the mainstream media, not only are they covering up the criminal activity of the elites, they're covering up the fact that this 5G system's been rolled out on top of you, and it's not safe, it's not regulated. And the reason why there's no safety regulations around it, it would fail. I had a lady knocked on my door, a lady called Debbie Chisholm. You may have seen it was in the Mail Online. Debbie said to me, Mark, they've put these LED streetlights on and I'm bleeding from the nose at night. And I'm thinking, I think she's lost her marbles. Because LED streetlights won't, might give you cancer in a few years' time, but they're not going to make you have a nosebleed. But I did notice this antenna. And my mind immediately thought, there's nobody stupid enough to put a telecoms transmitter or a controlling mechanism to an LED streetlight. Now, the reason for that, if I pulse modulate a light at a certain frequency through a square wave, I can weaponise it. So I thought immediately, nobody's going to put a controlling driver system on an LED streetlight that somebody can hack into and weaponise. It's not going to happen. Because the security services should have done the homework and they would have went, no, you can't do that.
And in my home, I can shut down my Wi-Fi. I can shut off my router. I can unplug any devices that I feel might create electromagnetic frequency radiation, if I like. Because it's my home and I have control over those things. But when it comes to this cell tower outside of our window, I'm no longer in control. Those electromagnetic frequency waves, radiation waves, come right into my home and pollute my home, whether I like it or not, whether we like it or not. And my children and ourselves are just exposed all the time now.
Because somebody can hack into that system and you can make people fit. Can you imagine taking over a motorway and just getting a load of people to fit? Imagine the carnage. The operating system's called Zigbee, by the way. You can go on the internet. It's already been compromised. So any foreign power, any kid lying in a bedroom who understands his way around a computer can weaponise these lighting systems and just put outside your house. It's ubiquitous. For some mad reason, the government want to try and save some money. The reason why the light's on all the time, because that little twig on the top, not a control management system as stated by Gateshead Council. That was a little bit of a lie. So it's masquerading as a control management system. It's actually 5G. It's uninsurable. Gateshead Council took out a press release stating that there's no risk. PHE say there's a significant risk from those pulsing lights. See those pulsing LED lights? at central nervous system. So prostate cancer, breast cancer increases, recent research has shown. So the story's getting out. Mainstream media covered that, was in the Telegraph. So these are uninsurable transmitters. This is an experiment being waged on the people of Gateshead by Gateshead Council, and that absolutely unlawful activity, because this was rolled out without any public consultation. That's in breach of parliamentary laws. They just about broke every single law. I hope the chief executive's watching this.
The chemtrails, the transgenderisation, the fluoridation, the smart grid, all of the electromagnetic radiation that we're subject to, and the reason that there's barium and strontium in the chemtrails. The reason for this, folks, of course, is because barium and strontium virtually attract radiation. They soak up radiation. They're very, very good conductors. You attract barium and strontium into your body, you're breathing it in through the chemtrails. This basically breaks down your body's resistance to radiation. It makes it very easy for your body to accept signals from the 5G grid. It also charges the atmosphere, so the atmosphere around us is no longer neutral. It's now positively charged with barium and strontium, so it's a very, very good way of carrying the signals from the smart G towers into people's bodies. Your bodies will accept the signals very easily, as I said, because you are also breathing this barium and strontium. So it's a very dark agenda and a very dark plan.
I had a son that was going to school at San Diego State University, and he called me and he said, "Mom, I've got the worst headache." He says, "I'm projectile vomiting all over my apartment." And I said, "Get to the hospital." And the emergency room doctor called me, and he said, "Your son has bleeding in the brain." And I said, "We'll be there immediately." When he got out, Dr. Tanawai told us that my son had brain cancer, had to pack everything that he owned in California, and brought him home, and he only survived just shy of 7 months. August 7th of 2009, I typed in cancer clusters, and I saw San Diego State University brain cancer cluster. I think it put me in shock, and I ended up on the floor for the rest of the day. But sorry. I realized they were talking about my son, so I got in my car and I drove out to San Diego, and I went over onto the campus. In these articles, they talked about a cell tower, and I went over there, and there's this huge cell tower that's outside of this building, which towers above NASA Tier Hall and room 131, where all these kids and people have come down with brain cancer. My son, Rich Farber, died October 11th of 2008. Professor Charles Cutter died June 19th, 2008. NASA Tier Hall, room 131. Lou Terrell, diagnosed with primary lymphoma brain cancer in 2008. Dwight Anderson died in 2008, NASA Tier Hall. Miss Laurel Amtower died August 29th. Richard Funston died, and he was also located in NASA Tier Hall, room 131. I just think that this wireless stuff, we just need to get a handle on it and warn the public. I just want parents to know, and I want kids to know that these are very dangerous.
Hundreds of birds have fallen from the sky in The Hague, the Netherlands, during a 5G experiment to see how large the range was and whether the new wireless technology would cause any harm in the local area. News of the adverse effects suffered by the starlings was slow to break, as initially the birds died in small numbers during the first wave of experiments. However, when a further 150 birds suddenly died at the same time, falling into a public park, people began to take notice and investigate. What caused the death of 297 birds in a park in The Hague? Now, if you look around the park, you might have seen what is on the corner of the roof across the street from where they died. A new 5G mast where they had done a test at almost the exact same time as the birds fell from the sky. Now, according to reports, nearby ducks seemed to react oddly as well. They, at the same time, put their heads underwater to escape the radiation, while others flew away, landing on the street or in the canal. Now, this information that I'm giving you now comes from a local's Facebook page in that area. In the meantime, back on October 30th, 2018, we received some more information. The birds that fell massively dead would be the victims of an experiment performed on those days in The Hague, where RF radiation was tested with a peak frequency of 7.40 gigahertz. This information comes from one source and should still be confirmed if possible. They go on to say it is not clear at this moment whether tests from 5G transmission masts have been carried out again, but so far everything points in the direction of 5G as the most probable cause. Now, the Dutch Food and Consumer Product Safety Authority, or the NVWA, is having a number of birds examined in the laboratory. Parts of the park are blocked and dogs are no longer allowed to be let out. The dead birds are always cleaned up as quickly as possible. Yet it is a crazy scene. Councilmember Robert Baker of the Party for the Animals had the feeling of being on a crime scene. The fact that so many birds fall from the sky at this location must have a cause and must be investigated. The truth about the safety of 5G is that it's not safe, and corporations are being allowed to roll out the new technology before they are sure about its effects on humans. The rollout of 5G technology is a massive health experiment that will have disastrous consequences for the human race, according to the first major university study into the controversial wireless service. In a coalition of 200 leading scientists and doctors are calling for an urgent stop to the rollout. 5G technology is a very real danger, warns Dr. Moskowitz, a public health professor at the University of California. The development of 5G, or fifth generation cellular technology, constitutes a massive experiment on the health of all species, he said.
400,000. Central government have got a plan to roll these big telecoms transmitter sites across the whole countryside, because some clever clogs thinks it's a good idea because farmers don't have broadband. I'm telling you now, 5G is not about broadband. 5G, I'll put it into context. If I shine a light at you guys, a torch, you wouldn't like it, as long as it's not a very bright one, but I wouldn't get locked up for assault. If I shine a laser at you, that would be assault. That's what 5G is. They're small collimated signals. The reason why the 5G weapon system, the 2.5 gigahertz weapon system that was used against the US Embassy in Moscow, the Americans couldn't even see it. And the reason why they couldn't see it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Same as the attack on the Cuban embassy. It was an ultrasound weapon, ultrasound for subsea. Anybody that thinks they're going to use one on land, think again. That was a mainstream media narrative. Microwave radiation weapons have been used for years. We used them against the women on Greenham Common. Killed quite a few of them, by the way. Because if I pulse modulate a bit of energy at you, because that's basically all it is, it's energy in air. I pulse an energy wave at you. Your cells are just energy, and I start to stop them, right, because that's how microwave radiation works in an oven. It's why your meat gets hot. This is the common sense view. And I just start to heat your cells up, just a little bit, and guess what? It causes oxidative stress, and you get cancer. So everybody's getting cancer, and they've now rolled out a system every few yards along the road. You've got a transmitter on the light, emitting the radiation directly into your bedroom window. And the design of these antennas, specifically these phased array type antennas, that's scanning your home 24/7. Now you'll see it. Well, why would they want to do that? Well, I'll tell you why. First and foremost, that's stupid. Secondly, they've been told central government are going to pull their budgets. So the local authorities aren't going to get much more money from central government, because obviously they've pissed it up the wall doing something else. There's that much fraud going on, you just don't know where all the money's going. But they've lost all the cash. Your local governments aren't going to get the money that they're entitled to, so they've been told to put this transmitter outside your home so they can scan your home, and this is what it's for. Smart bins. Smart metering. So they can meter, so they can listen to what you're doing. They can meter your bin. Your bin, believe it or not, by 2020, radio frequency identity tags, barcodes are going to be replaced. It looks the same as a barcode. It's a radio frequency identity tag. It's printed on the packaging. It's basically a mirror. So you know you can reflect microwave radiation with mirrors. It's quite a clever little trick. It's how you can weaponize them. So they put a mirror on the packaging. The signal comes from the transmitter outside your home into your home, because the 3D 868, 870, it's for 3D mapping. It goes through concrete. The manufacturer of this particular one says it travels a kilometre, minimum kilometre in heavy urbanised area. He's a liar. I can tell you it travels a lot further than that. That's what he's saying. It's not true, because phased array travels a lot further than that. Anybody in the military will tell you can see somebody at a couple of thousand miles, right? And that's what this is. So they're going to scan your home. They can see those RFID tags, and your local authority's being told when you finish with your next, your packet of Kleenex or your bit of Wrigley spearmint gum, you put the packaging in your bin. You go back into your living room. This is smart city. Smart, all right. You go into your living room, and guess what? Up pops the advert. So you're sitting with your ass. You'll have a couple of cans of Carlsberg Special after this, by the way. So you've had a couple of cans of Carlsberg Special. You throw them in the bin. They know you've used it, and your local authority is going to sell that data to the highest bidder. They've dropped a bit of a bollock. It's a class 1 cancer causing radiation. It also gives you dementia, damages your neural systems. Professor Martin Powell, write this down. He's one of the leading experts in the world. Read what Martin Powell says about microwave radiation. He is the leading expert. And you'll realise what I'm saying is unbelievable, but true. The science supports it. The scientific documentary evidence and the epidemiological evidence, what I mean by that, the evidence on the ground, kids self-harming, kids committing suicide, people committing suicide, and everybody's ill. Everybody you talk to, I've got bad heads, sore eyes. I wear protective eyewear all the time, because I know that central nervous system cancer is caused from this type of radiation. It's not safe. And your government's run it out on top of you without any care in the world. Telephonic are turned city into living laboratories, 5G. Living labs, experimental labs. They're experimenting on you. It's in breach of the Nuremberg Code. The Nuremberg Code specifically states you cannot be experimented on without your full knowledge. Do you know anything about what I've told you about today? This is in breach of all your human rights. They're scanning your home, 3D mapping your home. I'm going to tell you I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I believe is when I show you the antenna, I had the picture, I can explain to you how it scans your home. I can tell you the mechanics behind it. It's the reason for the injunction. You don't want me to keep telling people, because I'm frightening people, that's what they've said. They're not bothered with killing kids.
Will you be guaranteed? Will we be guaranteed that the school is, the cell tower is safe for us kids, and we won't get some sort of cancer or anything like that? Because I don't want cancer.
What grade are you in?
What?
What grade are you in?
5th.
You're in 5th grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going into 5th.
When my son was 9 years old, in the 3rd grade, he was diagnosed with leukemia. He went to a school where there was a cell tower within 300 or 400 feet from his elementary school, at Forest Hill Elementary School in Fairfax County. So if there's anyone that can understand your concern, it's me. Because I'm a parent of a child who had cancer and survived cancer. And I can tell you that there is no credible evidence to demonstrate that my son got cancer from that cell tower. There is no credible evidence to demonstrate that my son got cancer from that cell tower. Because the reality is that there's no evidence to show that that was harm. And I wouldn't be the business that would cause harm.
It's very frightening to be living in my home and watching my young children grow up and knowing that they have this exposure, that we just didn't plan on them having when we chose to live in this home. The World Health Organization classified electromagnetic frequency radiation as a class 2B carcinogen, which is in the same category as lead and DDT. That means it's a possible carcinogen. But now that the National Toxicology Program partial findings were released, many scientists around the world, many health experts, do believe that it should be reclassified now as a probable carcinogen. But it's not stopping the town of Huntington and other towns across the nation from allowing these cell repeaters or cell towers to be placed on utility poles within just a few feet from people's houses. Something needs to be done. We all need to band together. We need to start a grassroots movement. It doesn't really seem like we're going to get the protection on a federal level. And so we need to get together and contact our representatives and create some new legislation that will protect the residents from this happening. Maybe set back ordinances that will assure that these don't get placed close to homes and schools and libraries and daycare centers. I'm not sure what the solution is, but it needs to start with us. And I hope that we can all find each other and find the time and put the time into this really important issue so that we have some control over our freedom and our homes and our environment, and we can protect our children. Thanks for listening.